Professor Tamburini, thank you very much for joining our interview series. Let me start right away with the first question. In your research on African and Middle Eastern politics, how do you see colonial legacies influencing contemporary political structures and governance challenges in these regions?
Well, the colonial legacy in the Maghreb and Mashrek, I mean, Northern Africa and the Middle East, is very deep. And it marks all nations in these areas, starting from the absence of, in many cases, of a real Watan nation. Many countries lack the conscience of a nation, and nowadays tribal soul prevails, for example, Libya or Iraq. See, for example, Libya and this avoided state, because you have to take into account that before the Italian invasion during the colonial era, Libya did not exist as a state. And afterwards, Gaddafi tried to create a Jamahiriya that it was not a real state. Many countries relied after independence on French Fifth Republic and its semi-presidential form of government. Even Morocco, which is a constitutional monarchy, heavily relied on French law. So the colonial influence is very, very deep, even nowadays, starting from the formal government and, for example, the influence of rule of law is a basic creation of Western culture, Western jurisprudence and law.
All right. You have examined authoritarian regimes and their role in state stability. In your view, what are the key factors that sustain authoritarian rule in some states while leading to collapse in others?
I would start saying that all regimes are very different and have very few patterns in common. What is for sure is that all regimes are using Islam as a source of legitimation and even stability. The fear of anarchy and disorder instilled by regimes work as a deterrent, for example, in Tunisia and Algeria. You have to take into account that Algeria enshrined in its constitution the concept of fitna. Fitna is a disorder, civil war, and the constitutional law in Algeria forbid fitna. So the government is sort of protection against civil war disorder, and Islam it's a form of avoiding this chaos, institutional chaos. But sometimes this form of legitimation is not enough. Masses sometimes tend to overwhelm regimes that do not satisfy a minimum welfare. So it's very difficult to rely only on Islam.
Right. How do international powers such as the European Union, the United States, and China influence the political dynamics and conflicts in North Africa and the Middle East? And what are the long-term implications of their involvement?
Well, each international actor has a different purpose, of course. European Union has not a real, as all know, European Union has not a real foreign policy, and because European Union is a international organization that was born mainly for economic purposes and union. And European Union, when tries to have one foreign policy, is a failure because many voices are within European Union, and European Union speaks with too many voices that generally lead to chaos. Think about, for example, Orban in Hungary. Its concept of European Union is very different from the French one or the northern countries such as Sweden or Norway. I just make an example. The main issue is for European Union is immigration, for example, as a matter of fact. On the other hand, China is interested only in commerce and economic penetration. USA is retreating from the MENA region, even though it's interested in stability and the isolation of foreign enemies trying to penetrate in the sphere of influence. Nowadays, long-term foreign policy is characterized by multipolarism. Western countries will have to face new political and military powers, small and middle power, that will reshape all the international relations everywhere, not only in the MENA or outside the MENA region.
Right. In your analysis in the article titled "The Ghost of the Constitutional Review in Tunisia, Authoritarianism, Transition to Democracy and Rule of Law," you discuss the historical challenges Tunisia has faced in establishing an effective constitutional review system. What do you believe are the primary obstacles that have prevented Tunisia from building a stable and functional constitutional court, especially in the light of its transition to democracy?
I would divide the question into two historical periods, before and after 2011. During the Bourguiba era, from 1956 to 1987, Tunisia and Bourguiba established a constitutional control that was deemed not necessary. The supreme fighter, Bourguiba, was the guarantor of the constitution. This perception also affected the regime of Ben Ali, who created only in the last period of his regime a constitutional court, but only as an advisory body. Their sentences were not compulsory. After 2011, the main enemy was the lack of a working majority in the legislative power and instability in the parliament. I would also quote the lack of juridical tradition in constitutional control and the political immaturity in handling such a delicate issue. So basically, Tunisia had not the maturity, the legislative maturity to set up a real constitutional control. And even nowadays, the Saied presidency didn't want a constitutional control.
Right. In your analysis in the article titled "The State of Emergency, an Exception in Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia, the License to Kill the Rule of Law," you mentioned that emergency powers have been extended indefinitely in Algeria, Morocco, and Tunisia, sometimes becoming the norm rather than the exception. What are the long-term impacts of such prolonged states of emergency on the rule of law and democratic institutions in these countries?
At the moment, only Tunisia is under the pressure of a state of emergency exception. And this will deeply, deeply limits its possibility to develop a real democratic regime due to the fact that under the state of emergency and exception, executive power can easily bypass many of the check and balances studied to protect the citizens. Moreover, civil and political rights are easily compromised by this state of emergency that I would recall that it was born in France during the Fourth and Fifth Republic, but in France, it was limited by check and balances within the French Republic. Tunisia does not possess these check and balances. So it's a sort of legitimation of an autocratic regime that will affect deeply the possibility of development of a real democracy in the country.
Okay. In your article, How I Learned to Stop Worrying and Love Autocracy, Kais Said's Constitutional Self-Coup in Tunisia, you describe Kais Saied use of the Article 80 of the Tunisian Constitution as a constitutional self-coup. To what extent do you believe this move was justified within the framework of constitutional legitimacy, and what precedent does it set for the future of Tunisian governance?
Article 80 is a controversial article because it empowers the President of the Republic to take measures imposing the state of exception. In Arabic is al-Qasataniya, in the event of an imminent danger threatening the institution of the nation, the security and independence of the country, or hindering the regular functioning of the public powers. The President of the Republic can take the measures necessary to by this exceptional situation after consulting the head of the government and the President of the Assembly of the People of Representatives, and informing the President of the Constitutional Court. The President shall announce these measures in a statement to the people. This is the theory. The aim of these measures was to guarantee the return to the regular functioning of the public authorities as soon as possible. But the broad wording of the Article 80 always raised concerns, or above all, for the absence of the definition about what represents an imminent danger. What is an imminent danger? Even the measures taken are not clear. Moreover, was the Tunisian economic, political, social, and health crisis comparable to an imminent danger? So the measure taken by the Tunisian government are also rather tricky to adjust to the spirit of Article 80, which denies the RIP, the parliament, to be dissolved, but Kais Saied dissolved the parliament, and dissolved the parliament without any obstacle, because according to Article 80, in order to dissolve the parliament, he couldn't dissolve the parliament and should have heard the constitutional court. But the constitutional court was not active. So the president had the free hands in order to do what he wants. So even nowadays, without a constitutional court that control the executive power, Kais Saied is able to do what he desires in the country. That's why the constitutional court it's important to establish what kind of misdemeanor can be done in the country.
Given your argument that Tunisia's state institutions were unable to prevent Said's power consolidation, what are the long-term implications for Tunisia's democratic institutions, and what measures could have been taken to reinforce these institutions against autocratic chiefs?
The legacy of Kais Saied constitutional coup will be far-reaching. Tunisia is living through a new form of Zionism, Zaim chief. So we could translate with chieftainism, that is emulating Bourguiba and Ben Ali's regime. A new kind of authoritarian regime with a direct democracy maquillage that will be hard to control for the reason that I exposed a few moments ago.
In your analysis at your article titled "The Islam of the Government, the Islamic High Councils in Algeria Morocco, Mauritania, and Tunisia, you discuss how governments in the Maghreb use Islamic high councils to consolidate power and strengthen national identity. How effective have these councils been in maintaining political legitimacy and control over religious discourse, especially in the face of rising Islamist movements?
They were and they have been always fundamental in the widespreading of a national Islam, the real Islam. They always talk about a real Islam, which is a national Islam. For example, the real Islam in Algeria, the real Islam in Morocco, and so on. They were part of the bureaucratization of religion, whose main task is the control of religion and the fight against radicalism. They are the mouth speaker of the state and the propaganda of a moderate Islam that control mosques, imam, and all the religious discourse in the country. The main purpose is to fight radical ideas in the religious field. And that's very important in order to block and stop every kind of religious idea that come from outside the country, such as Shiism, such as the Salafi ideas or the Muslim Brotherhood idea. That they are sort of counterculture. They are sort of counter Islamic culture that is widespread by the state. Some kind of Islam that is not recognized by the state, and that will put into discussion the national idea of Islam.
Mm-hmm. Your article discusses Tunisia's unique trajectory as an exception among Arab countries post-Arab Spring. How does Kais Saied's re-election and recent actions compare to other examples of autocratic consolidation in post-revolutionary contexts, particularly in the MENA region?
The Tunisian exception emerges clearly for the use of populism, direct democracy, that was the trademark of the Kais Saied propaganda during the electoral agenda, criticism towards the parliamentarism, and the instrumental use of religion agenda that took votes from the Islamist parties, such as Ennahda. It is the use of a conservative agenda for the sake of the maintenance of the elite in power. That's the main Tunisian, between brackets, exception in the Northern Africa.
Mm-hmm. What does the re-election of Kais Saied on October 6 tell us about the future of Arab Spring? The turnout at the election was only 28%, which shows the overwhelming part of the population didn't support Kais Saied. Do you think this creates a serious problem of legitimacy?
Well, I would say, in my opinion, I would say that it's not a problem of legitimacy. It's mainly a problem of disaffection towards politics and politicians by the Tunisian population. The disillusion towards election as a tool to solve the problems of the normal citizen of everyday life. The problem of a sheer agony of the country from an economic point of view, the sufferance of young people that do not find a proper job. Tunisia day by day is smothered by a relentless economic crisis that Saied cannot solve, and no one at the moment seems to be able to solve it.
Mm-hmm. And lastly, Professor Tamburini, what do you think about the role of Ennahda and Rashid Ghannouchi in the democratic transition in Tunisia, and then Kais Saied's coming to power?
Ennahda and Ghannouchi, just immediately after the revolution, had a very powerful chance to solve the problem of Tunisia, to impress a the country division of a modern Islam to rule the country to with a truly democratic spirit mixed with Islam. They studied a word, Madaniya, a Dawla Madaniya, a civil state that was not an Islamic state, but not a laik state, but it was in Arabic is wasatiyya, an happy medium between a laik state and an Islamic state. Unfortunately, Ennahda was not able to govern properly the country due to its lack of experience, and because the party within is very divided. Nowadays, unfortunately, Ennahda does not exist anymore, and all the intellectuals that were part of the party are outside the politics, because Kais Saied said that the party was not legalized anymore. So the absence of Ennahda is a great loss for, I think it is a great loss for the Tunisian politics nowadays. The lack of an Islamic voice, a moderate Islamic voice, I think is a wound. It's a bleeding wound for the Tunisian politics.
All right. Professor Tamburini, thank you very much. I appreciate your time.
You're welcome.